Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I've joined you for lunch a number of times this year, and I've just really appreciated the warm welcome and the conversations with so many of you throughout this year. So thank you for having me. I was practicing this presentation earlier in front of my son, who is 5. And he told me that I should stop talking and stop reading things to him, and that he just really wanted to focus on Plato. So I feel that we can all go up from here. I can go up from here. So thanks again for being here and allowing me to speak. As Bill mentioned, I have a long history of work in the nonprofit field. That is really my home in doing mission-driven work, values-based work, working to serve, working to support others, to be the best of themselves, to deliver programming that supports people to really thrive in their own communities. And that's mostly been through the lens of mental health, but the last couple of years I spent at Banyan Community really seeing what the toll was that the pandemic had and racial uprising, and just how much we need to come together in relationship and connection with people. So that really drives me, and what brought me to be interested in working with Seeing Things Whole, which is what I'm going to share more about today. But I just wanted you to know that my work is about how to serve in a way that aligns my own values with the way I work in organizational life. And so today, what I hope you take away is a little bit of thinking for yourself on how you lead in your work, in whatever your life's work is right now, and thinking a little bit about how you want to interact in the world and how you want to bring your whole self into everything that you do. So I could have started with statistics about how much we've been through, but nobody needs more of that. It's been a hard couple of years, and so I feel we definitely need optimism, right? So I'm grateful for this group. We need optimism to feel engaged. We need optimism to thrive, but we also need tools in order to do just that. And since I am in the business of supporting organizations and leaders to align their values with their actions, I'm starting from a place of thinking about organizations. And we know that in the last several years, according to Gallup and other studies, we've had deteriorating engagement in the workplace, which will ultimately bring deterioration to how we work with our customers, whether you're buying a Hinge, or you're providing education, or you're helping someone find food for their next day. Deteriorating engagement in the workplace will deteriorate customers' relationships and will have a long-term impact on financial bottom lines for businesses, for organizations across the world. And it's something that we should be really, really concerned about. And so for me, building engagement means being in an organization where you can really bring your whole self to your work, whether that be as a volunteer or as a staff member. What does it mean to bring your whole self into that workspace? So how do you do that? Not easy, I think. But I start with a quote by Parker Palmer. Parker Palmer had a great influence on the development of Seeing Things Whole. He's an author educator in the fields of community, leadership, spirituality, and social change. And he says, our deepest calling is to grow into our own authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path to authentic service in the world. So being your whole self, bringing your whole self, for me, again, means leaning into your own values, understanding, having a strong sense of what you value and how you want to interact in the world, what your strengths are, and what your own purpose is, whether you're a mayor, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a grandparent. How do you find that whole self? And Parker gives us one metaphor to start us on that journey to think about what it means to bring your whole self. This Mobius strip is a metaphor as a way to come more in touch with ourselves and to really share our whole selves. So what he says is that we have an on-stage life, how we present ourselves in public life. And we also have a backstage life, how we might think about ourselves or how we might be centered at home in our private lives. And what he encourages us to think about is how to integrate these into a full or whole life, and so that there is no inner or outer, but instead there is a co-creation of what's inside and what's outside. So Mobius strip has a continuous inner and outer loop. And if you're interested, it's fun to think about what would you write down on your onstage life? What would you write down about what your backstage life is? And how do you co-create those to make that strip integrated into your full life? And what he says is that your soul becomes more complete when you are integrating those two things into your full life. So a couple of questions for you to just start with, to think about, is what are we sending from within ourselves out into the world, and what impact is it having out there? And what is the world sending back to us, and what impact is it having in here? And working to bring your whole self into alignment into workspaces is ultimately where seeing things whole model comes into play. So, as Bill mentioned, seeing things whole comes out of the servant leadership movement, which was a term coined by Robert Greenleaf. Servant leaders put followers first, empower them, and help them develop their full personal capacities. They are ethical and lead in ways that serve the greater good of the organization, community, and society at large. But service can also be detrimental when it is done in a way that is for self rather than the greater good outside oneself. And so our Seeing Things Whole founder, Dick Broholm, was interested in how do you create a framework to really be of service through your work. And through action research, he developed this threefold model, which I'll discuss. He was the first executive director at the Center for Greenleaf, Center for Servant Leadership, which still exists today. And he was a professor at Andover Newton Theological School, where he and students and business leaders, through action research, through practice, through convening, through conversations, were able to inspire the work of Seeing Things Whole. So our name, I have a really, really big name, the Real Office of Seeing Things Whole. Seeing Things Whole comes from the author E.B. White, who wrote that the role of an artist is to see things whole. And these three words evoke our work to support leaders and organizations to see better what is and what could be, to see from the ground up the practical things facing organizations, and see things in the context of a larger whole and a larger possible context of meaning that organizations are part of. E.B. White also said, there is no limit to how complicated things can get on account of one thing always leading to another thing. And so I think the practice of seeing things whole helps us to get into the nuance that sometimes we don't like to get into in our day-to-day lives. And Seeing Things Whole really has a fundamental belief that organizations can do good, that they are ordered ways of serving people by meeting needs and solving problems, but in many ways they have been corrupted and can isolate and alienate and frustrate many people when interacting with organizations. So our goal is to humanize organizations through our work. And so comes the Seeing Things Whole threefold model, where we lean into three different dimensions of identity, of purpose, and of stewardship, which I will share more about those three dimensions. So each dimension, what we believe is that each dimension is naturally part of our lives, that we may be drawn to some dimensions more than others. There is some imbalance among these dimensions, which is normal, and that often these dimensions are at tension with one another. But the tensions, that while they can be challenging, can also create opportunities for creativity and for moving forward in positive ways. So the first dimension is identity. And it is really about who you are and who we are and what we value, either as an organization or as an individual self. How individuals shape the character and quality of life by creating environments that reflect their core values and by drawing people into their fullest potential. So at Augsburg, we have a very particular brand of Norwegian Lutheranism and a focus on serving the neighbor. And that is, in many ways, how we identify as an institution to attract and to maintain a reputation in the community. And there are stakeholders that we need to think about when we're thinking about our own identity as an institution. So often those people are the staff, the coworkers, the people closest to us within an institution. If you're thinking about yourself, you might be thinking about your partner, your spouse, your kids, people who are you're having direct impact on a daily basis. So purpose, what we are doing, who we serve and how we serve, how we maintain clarity of mission and vision by focusing on the kind and quality of products that we provide, by attending to how well our customers and clients how we impact them and the larger societal needs that they may have. So again, at Augsburg, it's all about education, quality of education, and getting youth into graduation and into a career as well. So at Augsburg, we're focused on education, but we're also focused on who we educate. As an urban located university, we are continuously increasing our person of color. I think we're up to about 60% POC students on Augsburg, and that's a really important value that we hold to lean into urban education and the students that we serve. So, and lastly, is stewardship. Is what we are doing, how we acquire and we care for our resources. So, really, how do we secure those financial resources or land resources, and how we maintain them and care for them with care. So people who are dependent upon us in a financial way are people we're thinking about when we're thinking about stewardship. And those who are impacted by the way we acquire and use the resources as well is really a matter of stewardship. And I also think of stewardship as how we align across all three dimensions and think about the bigger picture of where we are at and where we are going as organizations or as individuals. So this is what I'm striving to do, is to build whole leaders and whole organizations to really impact the common good. These three dimensions are fundamentally interdependent, and they offer complementary perspectives. And it is really about taking these perspectives in order to enhance the service that we provide. I think about myself. I shared I have a couple of kiddos. I just recently finished my master's degree. This last year has been very busy, and I feel like it's kind of just been a blur. And it's hard to balance my own professional interests with the way that I want to parent. It's not easy, but I know that for me, in order to be my own whole self, that is that I have to have a professional life. I have to be giving back in some way outside of my household, and I just don't know how to do not that work. But I also don't know how not to make sure my kids have everything they need. So there's tension, and it's not easy, and sometimes we have to get creative to navigate through. So, and often the tensions that exist in organizational lives create really strong moral dilemmas about how we can move forward as an organization. So higher ed as a industry right now is going through some very, very challenging times because there's lower enrollment and people are fighting for students and resources, and it's just been a hard time to be in higher ed. I think there's a number of folks at my table who can speak to that. And so how do you care for the staff? How do you care for those providing the service and the students, and making sure you have a sound financial bottom in order to maintain the institution as well? Definitely not easy. But when we think about it, when we lean into these moral dilemmas, we can find creativity, we can find innovation, and we can move forward. Or at least that is my belief. And the practice of seeing things whole is about thinking about multiple bottom lines. That the recognition that we are independent to each other, that relationships really matter, and that we need to understand people's perspective and how they work within a system in order to make good decisions about how we operate. Every member is necessary, and all members are equal. So this perspective taking, this thinking about multiple bottom lines as what success means is really vital to the work of seeing things whole. And what is also vital to the work of seeing things whole is where I started. It's about bringing your whole self into your work. Because once you start coming to work to do your life's work, everything changes. When that connection develops between what really matters in your life and what you're doing professionally, work has a very different meaning. So a great example, of course, we already talked about Real Precision Manufacturing. But Real Precision Manufacturing was on a Seeing Things Whole journey before they even found Seeing Things Whole. Bob and his co-founders founded Real with really a collaborative leadership model. There were 3 individuals in charge and making decisions as a unit, and everyone had to agree. You correct me if I'm wrong. And Real is a German word meaning honest, trustworthy, and good. To really reflect those values. And that is how they have led the organization and how they continue to lead this organization. So Real bases a lot of their work on a direction statement that they've crafted long ago. And this is just part of that direction statement and how they live into their values. And they do what is right, they do our best, treat others as we would like to be treated, and seek inspirational wisdom. So not easy, and definitely something that has challenged the company over the many years they've been existed. But better culture, better outcomes across multiple bottom lines as a result of really leaning into these values. So Bob wrote a book, and there's several copies up if anybody is interested. And I told you I was going to put you on the spot if there was anything you'd like to share or to say. Yeah? Is that a yes or is that a no? Yes? Okay. Do you want to comment on it? Yeah.
Try to stay close to the microphone. I just wanted to tell you a story about Rich, because Rich is an example, and I just got an email for him yesterday, which gives me something to tell you. But Seeing Things Whole and Rail has had a long history of connection with both Augsburg and St. Thomas University. And there's a professor, excuse me, professor at St. Thomas named Mike Naughton, who was very involved with the Seeing Things Whole organization. And he teaches that there are two outcomes to everything that we do. And there's an objective or an outcome. That's the work that we do, the product we make, the service that we deliver. And there's an subjective, which is what the work and the way we're doing it does to the person doing the work. Because for better or worse, everything we do affects who we're becoming. And the purpose, Rail defined the purpose of the company as the growth and development of people. And Rich is a person that I haven't seen for a couple of decades, but we were brought together, not personally, but through the death of another colleague. And that led to an email exchange. And Rich, who was a production worker, assembler, and he got into inspection, worked from about, I'd say, 1975 to 2005. And he sent me, and I just received this yesterday, in response, I asked how he was doing, and he says, "Hello, Bob. Thanks for asking. I am doing pretty good. No major health issues. Still working early morning stocking at Fleet Farm. Bob, I've got to tell you that my time at Rail was never work. Yes, we got work done, but Rail provided such an environment to learn and grow and, yes, have fun. I can honestly say that I use the things I learned there every day of my life. That's no kidding, Bob. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all the blessings. A big hug to you and Aileen." Rich.
So when I thought about trying to explain it, and of course there's this model, and we can get into definitions and all of these things, but in living and breathing, Seeing Things Whole, and that attitude of really collaborating and focusing on serving with others is what it's all about. So I hope you learned something from the model, but it's also an attitude and a way of being, and it's a practice. And it's, for me, I've been at Augsburg and doing this work for a year now, and I don't think it was until just June that I really felt like I understood how to have the heart for this work. And for me, at the end of the day, all of it is really about love. How do you bring love to the people you interact with on a daily basis? How do you seek to understand, ask questions, be curious, and make decisions about the whole in whatever work that you're doing? So how do you live in love? And the way that I'm doing that in this work at Augsburg is by building out a program that seeks to inspire leaders like yourselves to work that love into your day-to-day. And so if you're interested, we have a whole leader profile on our website that you can take and just start to understand for yourself where it is that you're at within these three dimensions of the threefold model, and start to consider dilemmas or opportunities for your own personal growth, because we always all have opportunity to continue to grow and to continue to think about the challenges in a holistic way that we face. I'm starting a cohort program at Augsburg, which I can certainly share more information about. It'll be a coaching cohort program where leaders can come and get individual support and group support to better understand the challenges that they face as leaders, and then get feedback from a community of practice, which is a roundtable program that we run at Augsburg. And I always just encourage you to consider how to return to that framework, return to that multiple bottom line thinking in every day, in every situation. How can you be better at understanding the perspectives of others, of those that you support, of those that you care for, of those that you love? And so I will end with just one more quote. Have you seen a symphony orchestra? There is a chap at the back carrying a triangle. Now and again, the conductor will point to him and he will play ting. That might seem so insignificant, but in the conception of the composer, something irreplaceable would be lost to the total beauty of the symphony if that ting did not happen. So for me, and I certainly invite you to reflect with folks at your table if you'd like, for me, what that says is that you matter, what you do matters, and how you do it matters. So, thank you.